Sagittarius is truly fascinating. The sign you prayed for may be the answer you've been waiting for. Have you ever felt like you've sent out hundreds of prayers, so many that you can't even remember what the first thing was that you ever asked for? Maybe it was a whisper through tears, or just a quiet glance toward the sky in the middle of the night. But strangely, you kept going. As if something is still waiting to be answered? Maybe it was in a quiet night, when the whole world was asleep but you lay awake with a restlessness you couldn't name. Maybe it was early in the morning, when you softly whispered something in your heart before stepping into a new day, and then continued on as if no one had heard. But today, I want you to pause, just for a few minutes, to listen to something truly important. Because maybe you didn't realize it, but those whispers have already been heard. And maybe the sign you've been waiting for is appearing more clearly than you thought. If you're a Sagittarius, or carry the heart of a soul that never stops seeking, then this is not just a video. This is an appointment. It's no coincidence that you're here today. And I believe, in the next 30 minutes, you'll discover something. The answer you thought had disappeared into thin air has always been beside you, waiting for you to be quiet enough to feel it, and brave enough to receive it. Let this video be a sacred moment, not just where you listen, but where you're reminded that God is still working in your life, even when you can't see it with your own eyes. And if you feel that this is touching something deep inside you, leave a comment saying, "I'm ready to receive God's sign." Because when you write that, you're not just affirming it to yourself, you're opening a doorway of energy for the universe to continue guiding you further along your path. If you feel this is the message you needed, or perhaps someone around you needs it, please like and share this video. A small action, but it can bring great light. And sometimes, we don't have to shout to be heard. We just need to believe. There's something I often notice in people who carry Sagittarius energy. It's that no matter how much loss they've been through, they still keep one habit no one can take away: they still pray. Not always with grand words. Sometimes, it's just a glance at the sky as the day fades. Sometimes, it's a quiet sigh, as if that breath carries a message unspoken, sent to a presence beyond the stars. And sometimes, it's a dream that keeps repeating, as if their soul is whispering something they haven't quite understood yet. I once asked a Sagittarius friend, "After everything you've been through, do you still believe?" She smiled, didn't answer right away. But her eyes, deep and light, spoke for her. "I don't believe the way I used to," she said. "But I still keep praying. Not because I think every prayer will be answered the way I want, but because if I stop praying, I won't be myself anymore." That answer left me silent for a long time. Because I understood, there are people, like Sagittarius, who don't pray because they expect something to happen. They pray because it's how they keep their hearts from turning to stone. It's how they keep their souls from shattering. It's how they prove that, even if the world fails, faith can still exist in an ordinary person like them. And you know what? That is not a small thing. In an age where people easily doubt, easily dismiss everything that can't be proven, someone who still chooses to believe, who still keeps the habit of whispering to the sky each night, that alone is an act of courage. A silent form of holiness. In astrology, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of faith, of truth, of soul expansion. But no one said that Jupiter's path is an easy one. It is a road of trials, because to reach the truth, you must first pass through many lies. To hold on to faith, you must have felt it betrayed. To open your heart, you must have seen it break. And Sagittarius, the pilgrim soul, is the one who carries all those things, and still walks on. I believe that in every Sagittarius, there is a very personal crack. A place that once broke. A moment that once made them think they'd never believe again. Maybe it was someone who betrayed them. A dream that never came true. A loss that no one could explain. But from that very place, from that very crack, the light of faith found its way back in. Not blazing, not loud, but gentle like a small candle, burning steadily through the loneliest nights. And that is why I want you, if you are a Sagittarius, or carry Sagittarius energy, to pause for a moment and look at yourself. You have walked through storms no one knew about. You've held on to faith in your heart, even when no one around you spoke of God, or the universe, or anything sacred anymore. But you still believed. You still prayed. You still lit a light inside yourself, because you knew that if you didn't, the world would be missing a piece of light that can never be replaced. Prayer, for Sagittarius, is not a religious duty. It is a deeply human act. It is an act of preserving a sacred connection between humanity and life. It is a humble admission. I am not the center of the universe, but I am a beloved part of it. It's a way to remember that there are things greater than pain, and that some miracles come from within us, not from outside. And if you're hearing these words, and you feel something stirring inside you, a gentle ache rising quietly, then maybe this is no longer just a video. Maybe this is a touch, a meeting point between your soul and a source of energy that has always been watching over you. It could be God. It could be the universe. It could be a loved one who has passed, quietly sending you a message. Keep believing, because you've already come so much farther than you think. I want to invite you, if you feel that this means something, leave a comment saying, "I'm still praying, and I won't give up." That's not just a sentence. It's a way to remind yourself, and also a way to send a signal to the universe that you're ready for what comes next. Because in the next part, we'll explore something very profound. When you're patient enough to pray without needing a reply, that's exactly when the universe begins to respond in ways you never expected. You've planted prayers from the heart, and now it's time to receive the signs from above. There's a strange truth in the spiritual journey that many people don't realize. The universe is never silent. It's just that we, as humans, have stopped being quiet enough to listen. I remember once, a middle-aged woman, a Sagittarius, sat with me during a very long conversation. She told me that she used to believe if she prayed long enough, sincerely enough, then God would answer. But then, one event after another came crashing down. Loved ones passed away. Her family fell apart. Her health declined. She smiled softly, her voice still gentle, but her eyes seemed to have traveled through many storms. She said, "I no longer hope for a miracle. I just hope I can understand the meaning of it all." And that's when I told her. And it's also what I want to share with you today. There are moments when the universe doesn't speak in the way you expect. But that doesn't mean it says nothing at all. It's just that the universe doesn't speak in words. It speaks through synchronicities. Through a breeze that comes in the wrong season. Through a glance from someone that lingers for no clear reason. Through a number that keeps repeating on a receipt, a license plate, or your phone screen. Through a strange dream that wakes you with a pounding heart. As if something touched a depth inside you that you didn't know was still alive. I used to think signs from the universe had to be loud, like thunder or a door bursting open. I used to wait for a miracle like in the movies, a glowing sign. A stranger showing up with a message. But then I realized, real signs are often very quiet. As if the universe is whispering, to see if you have enough faith to hear. The deeper I went on this path, the more I saw. The real signals are always gentle. Familiar, sometimes so ordinary we overlook them. The universe doesn't shout to get your attention. The universe whispers. And dear one, if you are a Sagittarius, you were born with a special sensitivity to receive these things. Guided by Jupiter, you are not only a seeker of truth, but someone chosen to feel the layers of energy that others overlook. Have you ever noticed this? There are times you try to follow a specific plan, but everything keeps going wrong. Traffic delays. Lost items. Someone cancels. And then, by accident, you turn a different way and meet someone who changes your life. That's not coincidence. That's a delicate adjustment from the universe. Or maybe there are moments when you feel completely normal. Until you hear a piece of music, read a quote, see a symbol. And suddenly, emotion rises in your throat. Something inside you wakes up. That, too, is a sign. Not to impress you, but to remind you. You are still being guided. I've had a season where I felt completely lost. Prayer no longer comforted me. I felt like I was speaking into empty space. But then, in a dream, I saw a golden light from a distant mountain. No one said anything. But I woke up with tears running down my face. A clear feeling, keep going. And so I did. Sometimes, the signs the universe sends aren't meant to promise anything specific. They are simply encouragements. I'm still here. And sometimes, that's more than enough for a person to stand up again. There's a very important life lesson here. And I believe it's deeply needed in our time. Not all answers come through words. Some truths are only passed through intuition. Through feeling. Through subtle shifts that your heart notices, even if your mind doesn't yet understand. If you're in a moment right now where everything feels unclear, please don't lose hope. Look around, slowly. The signs are already there. They don't scream for your attention. They just ask you to be present. And if lately you've truly noticed strange synchronicities around you, repeating numbers, recurring dreams, uncanny coincidences, write a comment that says, I've seen the sign. You're not writing it to prove anything. You're simply affirming to yourself. You are listening. You are ready. I believe that when you write those words, you will begin to see even more. Because once the soul opens its door, the universe does not stop sending light in. And you know, people like you, the ones who still choose to believe, to listen, to connect with something sacred in a world that's growing louder and more disconnected, are a kind of light themselves. You may not realize it, but you are holding on to something deeply important for this entire society. Compassion, presence, and a belief in something better. When you live according to those signs, you radiate a special kind of energy. You are not only healing yourself, you are silently helping to heal the world. And my dear, in the next part, I will help you uncover something incredibly powerful. Why the prayers you once whispered never disappeared. They've already started to sprout. And if you are quiet enough to look closely, you will see heaven's reply is already touching your life, in ways you could never have imagined. I've always believed that some promises aren't written in words, but carved into the soul. These are not promises between people, but between your soul and something higher that's been watching over your every step. For Sagittarius, that promise is always there, like an invisible thread pulling you back toward the light. Even after you've been lost for far too long. Have you ever felt like you were born with a mission no one could quite explain to you? A strange sense that your life means something deeper than the everyday routines you repeat. That even if you live simply, do ordinary things, there's always an emptiness inside you, like something vast has yet to be awakened. I've felt that. And I know many Sagittarians have felt that too. You are the sign of the seeker, a spiritual nomad, someone who cannot rest easy in a small life. Maybe you don't always say it out loud, but your heart is always pulled towards something greater, something sacred. A truth. A destined encounter. A place to belong. And because of that, you can't easily settle. You can't convince yourself that this is enough. You weren't born to live just enough. You were born to find something deeper, and to pass that light on to others. To me, Sagittarius is like a messenger. You don't carry the answers, but you carry the flame that makes others want to seek their own. You don't try to convince anyone to believe, but the way you live, authentically, freely, with hunger for truth, makes people want to believe. Believe in a world with hope. Believe in things beyond the eye. Believe in the promise between heaven and earth, that if we live true to our souls, nothing we've lost is meaningless. I once asked a Sagittarius friend, "Have you ever felt like God was silent with you?" She smiled, a slow, quiet smile, and said, "No. I just think sometimes God is testing whether I'll keep the promises I made to myself." That sentence struck me deeply. Because it's true. Sometimes, the universe doesn't test you to see how good you are. It tests how loyal you are to what you once swore you'd never let go of. Maybe that's your faith. Maybe it's your compassion. Maybe it's the longing to live truthfully, to be loved the right way, to give without calculation. And Sagittarius, even after breaking down countless times, will always find their way back to that promise. My dear, if you're in a chapter of life where you're no longer sure you have the strength to believe anymore, then please, don't close the book of your life just yet. Because the next chapter might be the one you've been waiting for since the beginning. Ask yourself, what did I promise my soul before life made me tired? Sometimes, the fact that you're still choosing to be kind in a chaotic world is your loyalty to that invisible promise. And that's more beautiful than any miracle. I invite you, if this is touching the deepest part of your heart, to leave a comment that says, "I still remember my soul's promise." Not for someone to praise you for being strong, but so that you can hear yourself, amid a world that keeps making us forget what truly matters. And I believe, once you dare to acknowledge that promise, the energy of the universe begins to shift. Because God doesn't listen to empty words. He listens to the true frequency of your heart. Remember, Sagittarius is not the one who's always certain, but they are the one who always finds their way back to the light. And that light, it doesn't come from outside. It comes from within you. From the silent promise you've been carrying since the day you stepped into this world. In the next part, I'll share with you what happens when you stop begging for a miracle and begin to live as if you are already part of one. Because that's when heaven's response starts to bloom. We grow up believing that the answers are always somewhere out there. In thick books. In wise mentors. In powerful sermons. Or sometimes, in a clear sign from God or the universe. And so we go, year after year, seeking something that can explain why we're here. Why everything that happened, happened. And why our hearts still carry an unnamed longing. But then, there is a moment of deep stillness. No one says anything. Nothing big happens. It's just you, sitting alone, and suddenly realizing, maybe the answer you've been searching for all along isn't out there. Maybe it's within you. I once had a night like that. There was no miracle. No light from the heavens. Just a very long night, when I no longer had the strength to pray like I used to. I didn't know what I still believed in. I didn't know what to do next. But then, right in the heart of that despair, a thought passed gently through my mind. Like a breath. What if I am the very thing I once prayed for? That question made me cry. Because suddenly I understood. Maybe I don't need to wait for someone else to come save me. Maybe I don't need a grand sign to prove that I have worth. Maybe I've been carrying that light all along, even before the pain began. For Sagittarius, this is more true than ever. You were born with a flame inside. A torch, not to light your own path, but to help guide others who are lost. But sometimes, you forget that flame. Because life gets busy. Because wounds make you tired. Because you keep chasing light somewhere far away. And forget that what you truly need might be quietly glowing inside your own heart. Astrology calls this the return to self. The moment when a soul stops moving forward and turns inward. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion and wisdom. But when Jupiter goes retrograde, it doesn't ask you to expand further. It asks you to return. To reflect. To recognize that it is the growing through pain. The cracks and breaks. That made you deeper. Not weaker. I used to think that to be worthy of love, of miracles, of heaven's reply, I had to do everything right. Live perfectly. Pray constantly. But now, I know. Sometimes, the only thing you need to do is show up. Stop hiding your heart. Dare to say, I'm still here. I'm not perfect. But I'm real. And to me, that's the moment when the universe starts listening. Not to your words, but to the true frequency of a soul that dares to live honestly. If you're still listening right now, I want you to know something very important. Maybe you are the answer someone else once prayed for. Someone in need of hope. And your presence. The way you live. The way you endure. The way you refuse to give up. Is living proof that light still exists. That faith is still real. You may not realize it. But when you rise after a fall. When you choose love over hate. When you forgive instead of retaliate. You are sending a message more powerful than any sermon. I am the light. And dear one, if this is touching something inside you, I invite you to write in the comments. I am ready to live as the answer. Because when you live as though you are the good thing someone else is searching for, you don't just heal yourself. You create space for real miracles to happen. We weren't born to be ordinary. We were born to become living symbols of something deeper. Compassion. Resilience. And belief in what cannot be seen, but has always been true. And if you've ever thought you were too small to make a difference, remember this. A single honest word can save someone from despair. A gentle act can restore someone's faith. And a soul as truthful as yours can move the heavens. In the next part, I'll speak about what happens when you stop searching for the answer. And start living as if you're already part of heaven's greater plan. Because when that happens, the response from above no longer becomes something you wait for. It becomes something you start to become. There are times in life when we grow so tired. We don't have the strength to keep searching for answers. Not because we've lost our faith, but because our hearts are worn out from beating so hard just to hold on to hope. And it's exactly in those moments, when we stop trying, that something strange and beautiful begins to happen. The reply arrives. I used to believe that if I didn't keep striving, the universe would forget about me. But then I burned out. And it was in that very moment, when I had no more energy to push forward, that replies began to come. Softly. Quietly. Exactly the way the universe always moves. Everything I once believed in had collapsed, one by one. And I stopped. Not because I chose to, but because I simply couldn't go on anymore. And you know what? It was in that very stillness, when I stopped seeking, that everything began to change. A phone call from someone I never thought would reach out. An apology from a place I never expected. A door I thought was shut, gently opening again. No drama. No trumpets. As if the universe had been quietly working behind the scenes. Just waiting for me to grow tired enough to stop interrupting. For Sagittarius, this is not an easy lesson to learn. Because you are a doer. A seeker. A soul with a target. You're not used to letting go. You're not used to letting things just come. But that's exactly why, sometimes, the most important lesson the universe sends you doesn't come through action. It comes through surrender. Not surrender to fate, but surrender to something greater than you. Letting go is how you tell the heavens, I will now sit down and listen. Jupiter, the ruling planet of Sagittarius, is the symbol of expansion, of far-reaching vision, of faith. But you know what? Every planet, no matter how powerful, has its retrograde season. A time to turn inward. A time to pause and reflect on the journey so far. And in those times, what you need is not more effort, but stillness. I used to think that rest was a sign of weakness. But now I understand, it's an essential part of unfolding. Just like a flower, it cannot keep blooming forever. There comes a moment when it folds inward, to preserve its essence, to prepare for the next bloom. For Sagittarius, a being who lives on ideals and faith, you need to remember, faith is not always about action. Sometimes, faith is deep rest. It's daring to believe. If I was truly created for a purpose, then that purpose will not abandon me. I don't have to chase it. I only have to live truthfully, and it will find me. My dear, if you're in a season where you no longer feel the energy of prayer, please don't blame yourself. Maybe you don't need to say anything more. Maybe the universe is simply telling you, be still. I am doing my part. I invite you, if you feel this is reflecting exactly the season you're in, to leave a comment that says, I allow myself to rest, and let heaven do the rest. Because when you write those words, you're not just comforting yourself. You're inspiring other souls who are quietly battling the feeling of not doing enough. Remember, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to take a step back, to listen, to be still, to trust. And when you do, you'll begin to see the things you once prayed for are starting to find their way back to you. A friend once told me, after years of trying to live right, love right, pray right, she suddenly felt abandoned. But she kept one habit. Every morning, before leaving home, she'd open her window, take a deep breath, and say, I don't know what's coming, but I'm still here. Months later, her life shifted, not in the way she had wished, but in the way she truly needed. When she told me the story, she said, now I understand. What I needed wasn't a plan. I needed space for the sacred to enter. And you know what? So do you. You don't need all the answers. You only need a heart that still knows how to wait. A soul that still knows how to be quiet. And a faith, even if small, that not everything good comes from striving. Some things only come after letting go. In the next part, I'll share with you why, when you begin to live as if you already have enough, already are enough, that's when you become a magnet for miracles more powerful than any prayer you've ever spoken. Because when you stop seeking, you begin to attract. There is a sacred moment in the spiritual path. When you let go of longing, but do not give up. When you stop chasing light outside, and quietly become the light within. For Sagittarius, a soul always moving forward, always seeking meaning. The idea of stopping the search may sound like a contradiction. But it's in that stillness that you enter the state of receiving, where you're no longer begging the universe. You're flowing in harmony with its sacred rhythm. You're no longer asking for love, because you are love. You're no longer chasing miracles, because your very presence is a miracle. When you stop running, everything starts finding you. In that quiet space, you become a magnet for the divine. No pushing. No proving. Just being, true to your soul. True to the promise you carried from a lifetime before. Think back. How many times in life have you exhausted yourself trying to grasp the ungraspable? Trying to understand what cannot be understood? And then, only when you stopped, everything clicked together. Like a whisper from the heavens. That is the power of presence. When you stop struggling, you begin attracting. When you drop the weapon of control, you open your arms to receive. This is not surrender. It is spiritual art. To live without forcing, and yet everything comes to you with divine precision. Have you ever felt that when you stopped searching, what you were looking for suddenly found you? If you have, whisper a thought or share a few words to encourage someone else who is still searching. My dear friend, you may not realize it, but every quiet step you take, every time you choose faith over fear, every moment you hold on to kindness, these are sacred acts that light up not only your soul, but the souls around you. You don't need to shout that you've healed. Just be present. And your energy will speak louder than words. Because you are no longer someone looking for the miracle. You are someone bringing the miracle to others. Maybe you've fallen before. Maybe you've cried your prayers through tears. But you are still here. Still breathing. Still believing. And that, my dear, is enough to shake heaven. You are not waiting for a sign. You have become the sign. If you are still listening, this is not a coincidence. The universe is whispering to you. It's time to rise. Not to find the answer, but to become the answer you once searched for. If you see yourself in these words, maybe your soul has waited a very long time to hear this. And today, you finally have. Not with your ears, but with your heart. Maybe you've grown weary waiting for a clear sign. A grand reply. An undeniable miracle. But my love, maybe the fact that you're still listening to these words is already a sign. A soft whisper from the universe that says, you are not forgotten. You are being guided. And the light you've been searching for has never left you. If this is truly touching the deepest place within you, whisper a single sentence, even just in your heart. I have been part of the miracle all along. You don't have to shout. You don't have to prove anything. Just dare to admit, in silence, that you still believe. That you are still living truthfully. And in that very moment, the universe begins to whisper back. I believe. You are ready. I'll meet you in the next part, where we will step together through a new doorway. Not fearing your own light anymore, but beginning to live as though that very light was the prayer someone once sent into the heavens.